It's my pleasure to announce our closing keynote speaker. The title, as you can see, is Controlling the Variables, and the speaker is going to share with us his experiences, his hopes, and his dreams. Please welcome Thijs Feryn.
Can you hear me all right? We have cameras, we're pressing buttons right now. This is what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to be here with you, to share this experience with you. Have you noticed that in life, if we do things the right way, that often people say, oh, you just attribute it to luck. Oh, you did well, or you did good in life, you're successful. You were lucky. But then on the other hand, if that is not the case, people often attribute it not to bad luck, but just to failure. Have you experienced that? Well, in a lot of cases, we can use the term luck, and I believe in luck. But luck isn't exactly the typical term or the typical interpretation that people call it. For me, luck, it's a term we use to name things that we really can't explain. Maybe things we don't understand, or things we can't comprehend. But please do not confuse it with another term, a term we call chance. Do not confuse it with that. Because chance is completely random. It's completely beyond our control. Whereas luck, and I hope I can convince you of that, is something that we could push in a certain direction. Now imagine this. Imagine success depending on a bunch of variables, right? In order to be successful, there's a bunch of variables out there. Well, your number one priority is to discover those variables, to know what it takes to eventually become successful. And once you discover variables, you can start controlling them. And the more variables you control, the more you can control the outcome. That's this metaphor. So actually being successful is all about being in the, and you'll notice, in the right place at the right time, but more importantly, being there with the right mindset. Because you could be at the right place at the right time and expect for an opportunity to come your way. But if it doesn't, maybe you haven't reached that right mindset. The quest for success is like a treasure hunt, for which you'll need a treasure map. And there's a bunch of tricks you can use to control the variables that you need to reach the treasure, to reach the end goal. And a lot of it depends on things you'll see here. That's the thing about putting text on screen, people read it. Little tip is positivity, belief, passion, enthusiasm, also patience, but yet tenacity too. Having the right people skills, maybe a bit of charisma, all these things build up and eventually will allow you to control some of the variables and maybe be successful. That being said, hi, my name is Thijs. How are we doing today? Who's here for the first time? First DPC? Welcome to you all. Who's been here more than once? Welcome back. This is my 196th presentation. PD, it wasn't my 200th one because it would be really special. But the thing is, this is my 10th DPC, and I've done 7 official DPC talks so far, 3 Uncon talks, and the very first break I got as a speaker was at DPC. So for me, it's a full circle moment, and I'm glad to be able to share it with you. Now, for the sake of this presentation, this is my Twitter handle. You can use it to heckle me. I see some notorious hecklers sitting here on the front rows. Banter, heckling, you name it. You could also use it to criticize me during my talk afterwards, or maybe even praise me. We'll see about that. Now, technically, I'm a technical evangelist at a Belgian web hosting company called Combel. We have a bit of presence in the Netherlands as well. I also work at Sentia, which is also a hosting group, a sister hosting group. But back in the day, way back, I grew up in a small town, I still live there, called Dixmude. Dixmude is in the west of Belgium in Flanders. And I have to admit, there's not that, as you can see, not that much going on. We have a bit of World War I history. It's very rural, as you can see. It's a fun place to live. It's very relaxed. But there's not a lot of IT in there. And I wasn't really pushed in a certain direction. I wasn't really pushed to study IT. I studied languages. So I'm a native Dutch speaker. Who are native Dutch speakers here? Hallo, eventjes in het Nederlands, welkom allemaal. But I also, as a Belgian, had to speak. I studied French, I studied English, I studied German, I did 6 years of Latin, and even later on in life, I did a semester of Finnish. Suomi. Moi, moi, moi. Tervetuloa. So yeah, we could do all that. That's just trickery. But I was 14 years old and I wanted to get into IT. And yeah, my school counselors weren't really big fans of that. They're like, this doesn't really seem like the best idea, right? You're not that good at maths. You suck at everything else scientific. Your sense of logical, these things are all true. These are facts, by the way. I really suck at maths. Your logical reasoning is not that, you're not that analytical. And what they also said is, you don't need languages in IT. You don't need communication skills in IT. Who needs soft skills anyway, right? Right? Kenneth did a workshop about soft skills, so we realized that this kind of advice isn't really what we want to listen to. And I tuned out of that conversation. I said, you know what? I'm still going to do it. And I studied IT. And I still managed to suck at maths. But I learned a valuable lesson. When I had to fill up my math exam, I only filled in 50% of the exam. And I know what I filled up, the half was wrong. So I was bound to be flunked for that. But I got my report card back, and there was a 10 on it, meaning I had just passed. I figured this is not normal, this is not something that can happen. And then I figured it out. I was a representative of my class. I was like the class rep, and I had to go to meetings, which is cool because you can leave class without getting in trouble, you get fed for free. And one cool perk was that you could, it was the responsibility of the class representatives of that year to create the examination schedule. So because the other two were too lazy, I built my own examination schedule for 3 years in a row. And because I sucked at maths, the maths exam was always on a Monday after a long weekend. But I figured, why did they give me the 10? So after that long weekend, it was maths on Monday, why did they give me the 10? And then I figured out that it was a lot tougher for them to find a new class representative than to just give me that 10 on maths. So there I figured out, like, yeah, it's really true. It is really true. Having a decent set of communication skills, being able to interact with people, goes a long way. Now after that, I had to do an internship, and I didn't stay in Belgium. I went to Finland, and that's why I learned Finnish later on in a semester in Finland. I was in Joensuu, in the east of Finland, and I learned a couple of valuable things. Number one, I learned PHP there. It was a good decision, I guess. It was a good decision. But I also learned that the world is larger than small town Dixmude, and that there's some sort of international aspect to the world that I shouldn't ignore. So it was actually quite good. In hindsight, I'm standing here at an international conference about PHP. It wasn't a bad decision back then. So I know the decision I made back then influences me right now. And it was at my desk in Finland that I applied for a job at Kondo. That's 14 years ago. And I applied for a job as a support engineer, as a customer service engineer. And that was 100 kilometers away from where I lived, where the mentality in small towns is you have to stay close, you have to be in the molds that is set out for you. So I went from small town Dixmude to Ghent, and I went there for my customer service job, and I absolutely loved it. Because it allowed me to use tech skills, do problem solving, help out people, get in touch, build up relationship with clients, help establish credibility, trust, you name it. It was absolutely great. And you know what the irony of it all was? I got hired because I could speak French. Because they needed French-speaking customers. And also because I could write PHP. I know. It was a big middle finger to the people who try to give me advice and steer me away from IT. Because, hey, you don't need these kind of skills. You don't need to be able to interact with people. So I don't believe that the man is holding you down. I don't believe in that nonsense. But I do believe that specific people are going to project their frustration on you. That is true. And you have to be careful from who you take advice. Because they will project their narrow-mindedness, maybe their failures on you. And sometimes you just have to tune out of that conversation and say, you know what? I'm just going to do me. And that's important. And don't think about what other people will think of you. Now the cool thing is, wherever you go, in interpersonal relationships with family, with friends, specifically at the office, because you spend a lot of time there with your colleagues, you'll eventually get inspired. And the first time I got inspired was by our CEO. This is Jonas Danens. He's 1 year older than I am. He's 36 years old. He started his company in 1999. He wasn't an adult back then, and he asked his mom, who owns an organic food store, to have that under her umbrella company, and make sure that he could do IT. The reason why he wanted to do that is because he was a big fan of The Simpsons, and he wanted to build an unofficial Simpsons website, a fan website. But it frustrated him that he didn't find any good hosting companies to do that. There were none. And he said, screw it, I'll do one myself. And after that, he stopped going to school for two main reasons. Why do you need a degree to find a job? But what if you already have an entrepreneurial career? You don't need a degree, and B, he didn't have time because he wanted to do 24/7 support and so on and so forth. Another thing he learned me was that it is important to be, as you call it, low threshold. If you interact with people, regardless of their status, you have to be able to have that honest conversation, decent conversation. And he thinks that way, and he praised me for it at a performance review for doing it the same way. From high-level executives, to system administrators, to salespeople, even to the cleaning crew. It is important to respect them in your conversations, and that all adds up. If you believe in karma, that works that way. So I was very much inspired. Another thing he taught me, and that's a bit controversial, is to be commercial. Like, if I were to, I hope this doesn't cause any feedback in the speakers, if I were to ask you folks that your number one priority, or one of your priorities, would be to be commercial, does that sound attractive to you? Not really. I don't see that much enthusiasm. Well, that's because your perception of being commercial is the wrong way. We have that image of the business person trying to steal money from people's pockets. That's not really what being commercial is all about. Yes, there is a sales aspect to it. There's also marketing, there's branding, there's PR, there's networking, there's even after sales. Again, maintaining that relationship. He taught me that, and I'm completely on board with that. And don't just do that for your employer. You can do that from an employer branding perspective, but also for yourself as an individual. Sometimes you just have to market yourself. You have to be commercial if you want that job interview, or if you want that promotion, if you want to get stuff done. You have to do your own branding, because based on merit alone, you're not always going to get it. Not everyone is waiting for you, unfortunately. Sometimes you have to make some noise yourself. Now, building on that commercial aspect, I strongly believe that that was instilled in me from a very young age. And it is a coincidence that my boss's background is identical to mine. We both grew up in an organic food store. My mom runs a small one in the city of Dixmude. His mom runs a bigger one in Kent. And this, let me guide you to the house I was raised in. So whenever I want to enter my house, I have to open the door of the shop, and I have to walk through the shop to be able to enter my living room. And if there's people there, of course I need to address it. That's my mom, by the way. And I was taught at a very young age to say hi to the clients. Super important. This is a scene I asked my mom to record. This is not natural. I asked her to do that. I said, Mom, look there and wave. And I recorded that. That's what happened. But it was to prove a point that at the age of 3 or 4, I had to say hi, to wave, or whatever. And it is important to the brand that you are respectful to the people. Because if you are respectful and you build up that trust in the long run, that's one of those variables that will come by, just grab onto it, and maybe it will bring you to success. And it helped me in my communication skills as well. Like, whenever my mom wouldn't be available, maybe she was putting something off the stove, or she was on the restroom, or putting garbage in the garage, and the bell rang, I knew it was my job to welcome the clients. Like, hi, welcome, my mom will be in there in a minute, just a second. If there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. Same thing for the phone. When the phone rang and I was closest to it, I picked it up and did what I did. And I strongly believe that helped me in my job, and to view what truly commercial is being about. Being truly commercial is about respecting your client, listening to what he or she needs, and trying to provide that. It's not about pulling money out of the pockets. That's a side effect. Now, this is another colleague of mine. This is Peter. And Peter works at Sentia, that other brand, and he's one of our main salespeople. He is a business developer, and he said to me, and for a salesperson that's quite impressive, he said, we are not here to sell. There's no such thing as B2B and B2C. There's only one thing that matters, age to age, human to human. And he sometimes would ask me to join him in a pre-sales context to help him out. And he said in advance to me, Thijs, we're not going to sell. I know I'm the sales guy. We're not going to sell. We're just going to listen to what the person has to say, and then talk about technology. You talk about technology, but don't mention our products. Don't mention what we do. Just talk. And I found that interesting. And he says, sometimes in a meeting you have to say to the client, sorry, this is not a match, this is not going to work out. Sometimes you have to bring another company, and maybe that could even be a competitor of yours. But that will get you the credibility. It's about being truly commercial. And I have a little story about that. So it was a sunny afternoon in June, a couple of years ago, and Peter asked me, hey Thijs, could you come to the city of Ypen, which isn't that far from where I live. There's a potential client of ours there, and we need to talk. And I knew it's not that far from where I live, sunny day, I grabbed my car, 20-minute drive, I entered that meeting, and I was specifically told not to be trying to push products or services. I had a nice and decent conversation, we talked about their problems, we talked about their challenges, and at the end of the meeting, I shake hands with the CEO, and I say, it was nice to meet you, I'm going back to Dixmuiden, enjoy your weekend. And he said, Dixmuiden? Hey, cool, that's where I live. I'm like, yeah, where do you live? In a small town called Beest, it's a small village. I'm like, oh, I know where that is. And he said, in the Hendrik Consciencestraat. I'm not sure if that's GDPR compliant, what I'm doing right now. Anyway, I'm not going to mention his last name, so don't worry. I'm like, oh yeah, I know people who live there. My good friend Cedric and Marlies live in that street. Oh yeah, I've heard those names, but I don't know those people. But you know what? Next time I hear those names being mentioned, I know they're your friends. And I walked out of that meeting. And the week after, I went to a lunch place with my wife. And there was this lady with 2 kids who said hi to my wife. My wife is a speech therapist. They have a little conversation indistinctively. I don't hear it. I'm just eating my sandwich. And they walk out, and they go outside to sit on the terrace. And my wife says to me, hey, Thijs, you know who that lady is? She lives in the same street as Cedric and Marlies. Interesting. And I said, my wife's name is Lise. I said, Lise, hold on tight. I'm just going to go outside, say hi to the lady. And she said, what, you're going to do what? I said, don't worry. I want to say hi to her. Why? You'll see. And I walk outside and I said, hi man, my name is Thijs. I'm the husband of Lise, the speech therapist of your kids. I heard that your husband, or was in a meeting with your husband about a new project he's working on. She said, yeah. I've heard about that meeting. I heard it was very nice. He's currently in India doing some negotiations for the offshoring and the outsourcing of it all. And I said, please tell him I said hi. She said, I will. My wife looked, what the hell is this all about? And I thought that was the end of it. That was really weird. You could call that a coincidence. And I went home to continue work after lunch. And there was a big stack of paper on my desk. And it was in my way. And because I am clumsy, I dropped those papers. And they were scattered all around my office floor. And there was this one business card that was on top of the stack that lay there in plain sight. Guess who it was? Right? It was Dimitri, that was his name. It was Dimitri's business card. And I took that business card, I sat behind my desk, opened my email client, I emailed him, Dimitri, I know you're in India, I had the weirdest day right now. I met your wife. She was very nice, but what a coincidence. And I even dropped my stack of papers, found your business card. Either way, I know this will sound weird to you, but it was nice meeting you, it was a good meeting, hope we see one another soon. That was that. He responded to it and said, yeah, what a small world, blah, blah, blah. And a couple of weeks later, it is my son's school play, and he has to perform on stage. Again, it's the month of June, a nice sunny afternoon, a nice sunny Saturday afternoon. And before he's on stage, my little boy, I go to the bar to get some drinks for my family and friends who are sitting at the table. A guy taps me on the shoulder. You know who it was? That guy. And he says, hey, Thijs, I didn't know your kids were in the same school that my kids were in. Oh, how nice. Say, about that meeting we had. Yeah, I feel good about what we did. We might be able to work together. 1 month later, contract got signed. Because we've established that relationship. And more specifically, there were some uncontrolled variables in play. Why did I meet that lady? Why did I talk about the city I live in? Why did I drop that stack of paper? Why did he tap me on the shoulder? Like, I'm not in that state of mind to understand what happened. And I will, for the time being, I will use the term luck. Can't explain what happened. It's luck. Maybe later on, maybe in 20 or 30 years' time, I will see it coming. You have people who say, yes, it's about focus because you focus on it, that these things will happen, and the universe, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, for the time being, I don't know what it is. It is luck. There were uncontrolled variables at play. Now, I do believe that building up a personal relationship for the sake of that relationship is not enough. Because if you have the attention of the person who can grant you success, who can give you opportunities, you have to be very positive and you have to believe. That is important. You have to leave a mark, have impact. And I believe that passion is your #1 priority there. Everyone is passionate about something. Like, who is passionate about some technology, some hobby, something? Everyone is passionate about. I want to prove that. Everyone is passionate about that. And you have people that come to me like, I don't know what I need to do in life, and I don't know where my direction lies. And I said, there's one thing you're passionate about. And sometimes it's something really stupid, but bank on that. And be passionate about that, and display that passion. Make sure that other people know that you're passionate about something. And that will help. I have a story about being passionate. Something that helped me quite a bit. Now, in 2014, I was in this very city, on a city trip, with my wife and Cedric and Maurice, the couple who lives in the same street as Dimitri lives in. We were in this lovely city. Can anyone guess what the city is? Yeah, that was quick. It was the Brazilian contingent here. Yeah. That was Lisbon. And the day before we left for Lisbon, I saw this Facebook post. This is by the Rolling Stones. I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan. Ever since the age of 6, my dad gave me a record, back in the day when we still had record players and on Spotify. He gave me that record, and he let me listen to it, and as a kid, I was intrigued by it. To such an extent that at the age of 11, my dad took me to see my very first Rolling Stones show. It was really small. It was in 1995, Voodoo Lounge tour. Amazing. And when I was 22, me and my dad went back again to see the Rolling Stones. Again, it was amazing. And you know already that if a tour is announced, we already have tickets for the Belgium show. But my idea was, while I'm in Lisbon, why don't I watch that show? Why don't I attend it? So I called my friend, Daniel Gomez, from the Lisbon PHP scene, and I asked him, like, hey, Daniel, I want to see that Rolling Stones show. Can you get me tickets? And he's like, dude, what are you talking about? That's the show of the year. That show has been sold out for months. There is no way in hell you can get to that show. So we did our city tripping thing, and the ladies were really tired. We put them to bed, and me and my friend Cedric, who were sometimes adventurous types, and like, hey, let's take the subway, let's go there, let's see what happens. And that's exactly what we did. We took the subway to Boa Vista Park in Lisbon, where the show was. I see people not see Raphael nodding. Been there before? Boy, it's a big, big, big area. And I was trying to get tickets. I was looking around, and that's the thing we always do, right? You end up in a situation where you want to reach success, and you want to figure out what the variables are. And a lot of variables are related to people, so we started looking at people. Who are the stakeholders here? Okay, we see these guys here looking for tickets as well, so we talked to them. And we figured out that these were really young kids with 20 euros in their pockets, 20 euros to spend, and their whole idea was, buy 20, sell 100. I'm not planning to do this show. I knew that the prize was set at 79 euros. So I had 79 euros in my pocket, so did my friend Cedric. So we started rather aggressively, because it was 90 minutes to showtime, trying to buy tickets. Like, are you selling tickets? Are you selling tickets? Sometimes we went a bit over the top, and one lady screwed us over and said, you might want to talk to those gentlemen, who ended up being undercover cops. We got in a bit of trouble, but we didn't give up. So we expanded our action radius between the subway station and the entry, and we knew that time was our friend, but time was also our worst enemy. If we didn't get tickets sometimes, so be it. But that wasn't the worst, because I had no real idea if I were to get tickets. And if not, I'll just stand outside and listen. Now, 15 minutes before showtime, I see this couple, and I ask them, are you selling tickets? Yeah, we have 2, but we want 100 euros. Like, I'm not giving you 100 euros, it's 79 euros. No way. And we kept hassling and hassling them, and I said, you know what? That ticket you're holding in 15 minutes, that's just a sheet of paper with which you can wipe your ass. And then she wasn't still convinced, she found us a bit aggressive, and then I applied the trick of tricks.
Show me the money! Show me the money!
I took the money. 79 euros.
Show me the money! That's it, motherfucker! You got to yell that shit! Show me the money! I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
So we did, and I showed them the money, and then they knew what? These guys aren't really planning to screw us over. 15 minutes to showtime. We got the tickets. I stuck really close to them to make sure they weren't counterfeit. I stepped on the meadow, and then a couple of minutes later, this happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome the Rolling Stones!
And they had a special guest with them.
Well, we got a special guest here tonight, Bruce Springsteen.
This was actual footage from that show in Lisbon. I couldn't have anticipated that the boss Bruce Springsteen were to be there to play a one-off show, playing my favorite song, That One Tumbling Dice, and it was just the best decision ever. Is that being successful? I don't know. What I'm trying to say here is that if we would have accepted that the show was sold out, tough luck for us. But I didn't, and we went there, and we tried to use the variables that were present and try to discover new variables. And this is a story I will keep on telling to people. A story about belief, about positivity. And I saw Bruce Springsteen, and my dad's also a big Bruce Springsteen fan, so I called him, Dad, I'm here, and Bruce Springsteen is here as well. And I'm like, oh, you little bastard. But unfortunately, not everything in life is that positive. Sometimes disaster strikes. And it happened to a guy I've gotten to know over the course of the year through a mutual friend. This guy's name is Tristan. I met him at a football game. We're both season ticket holders for Club Brugge. And he's a friend of mine. And he was born with hemophilia. So that means his blood doesn't clot naturally, and every wound is a potential life and death scenario. And as a kid, he needed injections. Injections based on the plasma of donor blood. And that helped him a bit. But at the age of 11 to 12, he became really, really, really sick. And his parents didn't know what to do with him. And he had him examined by the doctors, and the doctors examined his blood and figured out that one of the samples that he had, one of the blood samples that was used for the plasma, was infected with HIV. Yeah, I hear it's in size. My friend Tristan has AIDS. It was terrible. And the doctors said to his parents, we don't know what to do now. That was in the 90s. We don't know what to do with him. We can give him days, weeks, or months, but he's not going to cut it that longer. If he has a dying wish, focus on that right here, right now. Do it. And his parents knew he was very passionate about football, and very passionate about Club Brugge as well. And he told me that he was in a constant state of fever. Before the game started, he had 38.5, 39 degrees. By the end of the game, out of sheer passion and sheer excitement, he was over 40. And that's tricky when your immune system doesn't work that well. But he carried on. And his parents knew that was his dying wish, and they got in touch with Club Brugge, the team that both of us support. And back in the 90s, you didn't have these charities and these foundations. So it was just, they had no experience with that. And they explained the scenario, the situation, and two players were interested. Thijs Feryn and Stefan van der Heyden, which are club legends from the 90s. He went to the hospital because he was now in hospital, couldn't go home. And they struck a sort of friendship. And that friendship has lasted. But till this day, these two players are now respected coaches, both national and international. And whenever they have a game that they're coaching, the name of Tristan is always on the guest list. He's always welcome. And that carried him through. And you know what? Tristan is still alive, otherwise I couldn't be telling you this story. Tristan is doing quite well, actually, given the circumstances. He's still an avid Club Brugge fan. He comes to the games. Sometimes he's a bit pale, but he's doing well. He has a job as a teacher. He has a nice wife, and he has 2 kids. He's doing great. And if a guy like that can be positive and don't complain and embrace positivity, well, I've been spared in life, didn't really endure hardships or disease or any disaster like that. I sure as hell can be positive. I have a little story about that, a video by a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. Who has heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? He's quite in your face. I'm not 100% believer, but every now and then he has this really cool thing. Check this out.
I've had people who have $50 million trust funds cry to me at dinner that their life sucks because they've never fought for anything, they never did anything, and they don't have any purpose, and they're lost, and they're suicidal. Which the people in here that were born with nothing are like, fuck you. Right? A bunch of you are like, fuck that, right? It's because you don't know the alternative. Everybody's pointing at everybody else without understanding. Nobody's deploying empathy. Nobody's deploying empathy. Everybody's worried about what's their issue without realizing everybody's got fucking issues. My friends, let's just get to the punchline. Nobody gives a fuck about your problems. Nobody gives a fuck about your problems because it's true. Either they've got their own fucking problems, right? Or they're just focused on some other shit, but they can't empathize with you. And more importantly, if you think that somebody owes you something because you started at a disadvantage, you're a fucking loser.
Many methods, it's quite harsh, right? But there's a point in there. I honestly believe that one should deploy empathy. That's one of those things you can control variables with. I used to be less empathetic, but I learned the hard way that not everyone is wired the way I am. Some people know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes empathy hits you right in the face, and I like figure out, okay, not everyone's the way I am, not everyone thinks the way I am. But on the other way around, you can't expect that to come back. No one gives a fuck about your problems. You should know that. And I have a story from that. My wife, who is a speech therapist, has a lady whose kids come for speech therapy, and they're independent roofers. They're in the construction business, they build roofs. And if you're in a family business, of course you have to do everything yourself. And the lady climbs on the roof herself to help her husband if required. And she fell 4 meters down, flat on her back, broke her back. There was lots of empathy with the clients. Yeah, your health is super important. You have to focus on that. Don't care about our roofs. We'll do that later. First, get well. That was day 1. Week 3, the phone started ringing. Hey, our roof, come on. It's raining. We need that roof fixed. A broken back doesn't heal in 3 weeks' time. No one gives a fuck about your problems. And please, if you're in a situation where you don't accept the status quo, you have different options. Either don't do it at all, try to change the status quo, or adapt yourself to that situation. If you can't change it, don't do it, or find a way to navigate around that. But please, 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 do not complain. And also be careful who you surround yourself with, because if these people are these typical trolls, nags, and complainers, you will create this like toxic downward spiral of negativity. And let me tell you, if there are people out there who are willing to grant you an opportunity, give you the variable you need to be successful, they're sure as hell aren't going to give it to complainers. They want to give it to people who are passionate, who are enthusiastic. Now I know everyone's not wired the same way, but keep it in mind. Complaining does not help. And I have another Gary Vaynerchuk video about complaining.
If you're pumped with your life and you're good and you're not complaining, do you. Like, don't work at all. I don't give a f. This message is for the people like, oh, I don't have time. I don't have money. Woe is me. Here's my thing. Stop watching the entire seasons of House of Cards, because if you're complaining and I audit you, I promise you, I will find 4 hours that you're not doing jack shit. You're playing mobile games. You literally, like, really? Like, you've got time for Angry Birds and you're complaining? Get the out of here.
All of that is related to hard work, unfortunately. And I know it's a cliche, but hard work really gets the job done. And if you're complaining, maybe you haven't worked hard enough. And I know all the my accomplishments in life are based on hard work. Merit alone, talent alone won't get you there. You need to develop it. And sometimes I look at colleagues, and I think we all had that. Like, you look at a person who started out at the same time you did, and they're going way beyond you. You're like, hey, or maybe I was here longer. Why doesn't it happen to me? And your natural reaction is to complain and to feel disappointed. But the reality is, like, there's no such thing as an overnight success. While I was relaxing or playing or going out with my friends or playing with my kids, they were probably working. The person I'm talking about, my manager, is currently in Amsterdam. He was planning to join me for this talk. But there are 1,600 VMs that are down right now. I was in New York with him and his wife. And at 7 a.m. we woke up, 7:30 we went to breakfast, and I saw a smile on his face. I said, what are you smiling about? I already managed to do 100 emails. So it requires a lot of work. And sometimes you have to work, shut up and work harder, and don't play Angry Birds, and don't watch House of Cards, and just work. But yeah, it has to be worth your while. Like, I know that sometimes I'd rather play FIFA 18 on the PlayStation. That's reality. But I have to accept that this will have an impact on the longer term. Maybe I could have practiced this talk a bit better than instead of playing FIFA 18. That's just my choice, and I shouldn't complain. I should either accept the situation, change the situation, or if the situation is unchangeable, something that falls from the sky, just navigate your way around it. And I have a final Gary Vaynerchuk video. I'm not the biggest fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he makes good punchlines and good quotes. Check this one out.
I don't fear being self-aware. I know I suck at a lot of stuff. I think everybody lies to themselves.
Some people are meant to be B and C players.
You know, self-awareness requires understanding both and then choosing which path you want to go through. I'm a big fan of going all in on your strengths and don't give a fuck about what you suck at. Self-awareness isn't only just betting on your strengths, it's accepting all your shortcomings.
So when you try to achieve something, when I look at my colleague, who I consider more successful than I am, he'll debate that, but I believe that he's more successful than I am. I can try to follow his path and say, okay, what do I need to do? But unfortunately, I know my flaws. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm bad at, and you can't double down on that. What you need to do, as Gary said, is figure out what you're good at and try to focus on that. And that's exactly what I did. Because I know I suck at maths, I suck at physics, I suck at logical reasoning. I don't have that analytical mind. But does that mean I don't get a seat at the table? Does that mean I am not accepted by you? I have other things I can do. And I think we understand by now that our community, PHP community or the broader tech community, is more than finding hardcore nerds who develop code. Code is important, and I know I should practice that. And I know I suck, for example, also at time management. I'm not that good with that, and I used to be the team lead for our support department. I was really good with the clients, and technologically I was sound, and I was able to keep everyone more or less happy. But there were these incidents where I knew, okay, I really suck at that, and I'm not really covering my bases, and I try to improve on that. But I knew that some of my colleagues were better at it than I am, and they had that ambition, they had that drive, and I could try to defend my position, but I didn't. I said, you know what, maybe it's just better that I try to do something else. Maybe it is better than that I become an evangelist. Because our managers supported me in that. They knew, like, okay, Thijs, yeah, there have been some complaints about you not covering the weekend shift properly because you had planning issues and your time management issues, and maybe you're a bit slow in the execution, but the execution you do is brilliant in terms of quality. Maybe you should try focusing on something else. And that's what I did. I got the opportunity to do very much the same thing. Interacting with people, solving technical problems, talking about that, sharing my mindset. But instead of on a one-to-one basis, I can stand here on stage and do it in a sort of broadcasting way, one-to-many. And it allows me to step into a community that, yes, of course, we need the kumbaya community stuff. That's like obligatory in a keynote, right? But it helped me a lot because in 2007, prior to becoming an evangelist, I already went to my very first conference. And that was in Mörfelden near Frankfurt, the International PHP Conference, which turned out to be not that international. It's primarily German speaking. Just a piece of advice. So in hindsight, it wasn't my favorite conference, but it was my first. So at that point in time, it left a big mark, a huge impact on me. There's a group of like-minded people, and I saw those speakers, some of which I'm friends with now, but back in the day, I was like, wow, these are my idols. Pro tip, don't idolize people. They're good folks, they're real experts, and it was right there, right then, that I figured out that I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be up on stage to talk to people, and management saw that and gave me that evangelist role. Now, unfortunately, people weren't really waiting for me. There was a bit of struggle. Even for this conference, I've done this conference numerous times. I think this is my 10th talk at DPC, 7th official one, 3rd at the 3 Uncon talks. But it didn't go that smooth. The first editions, I got the Dear John letters. Who's familiar with that? We had, like, when you get this kind of email and it says, we had an overwhelming amount of submissions, read no further, you're not selected. We all had that. Who had that? I had that. No. Sucks, right? What you can do is you can complain, but again, no one gives a fuck about your problems, and those complaints will not get you selected in the future. So what I did was, I was patient, and I slugged it out in the underground, so to speak. I went to meetups. That was the PHP Belgium era. Anyone remember PHP Belgium from back in the day? Yeah? That turned into PHP Benelux later on. And yeah, I just slugged it out. My very first presentation was actually at a college, the college I graduated from. And then I was in the college circuit trying to talk about professional PHP. That was that era, where we were telling people, look, .NET, yeah, C, yeah, Java, yeah, all that stuff is really good at the enterprise, but PHP has hit that level where it can do all that. And that was my thing. I talked about that. I did the college circuit. I developed a talk called PHP through the eyes of a hoster. I did that at meetups, and I just slowly started to build that up. Small presentations. Sometimes 5 people in the room, sometimes 50 people in the room. And I also learned that I had to be everywhere. All these meetups. Not to present, just to get to know the people. Because it is important, again, to establish those relationships. Build up those relationships with the people. So that they know who I am. Because again, based on merit alone, you will not get it. Sometimes you have to go to people, introduce yourself, talk, and it's a long process. You have to play the long game. And another person from our community, I'm not sure if he's here, does that quite well. And I looked at him like, in hindsight, he's like really doing it well. Who knows Michelangelo Van Damme? Who has heard about Mike? Yeah, we all know. Round of applause for Mike. For the people who know Mike, we all know that he is everywhere, all over the place. One of his famous quotes is, the cool thing about time zones is, at night you can work for the US. That's one of his quotes. He even used, he lives off of coffee, junk food, and cigarettes, but he does it well. You know what? He uses the outcast status that is attached to smoking cigarettes these days to his advantage. He uses that to network. A lot of his consultancy gigs and his speaking gigs were based on just standing outside in the drizzly rain, smoking cigarettes with a person, and you feel like-minded. I hate cigarettes. I've never smoked cigarettes. But I get it. It is clever. Michelangelo just keeps going on and on and on, and I nicknamed him the Machine. I'm the Machine! He does it well. He is all over the place, and he travels to all sorts of conferences, and he really paved his own path. And I try to do that myself. And one of the things I try to do as well, and it seems a bit stupid, and I understand that you're critical of that, is by using social media, trying to use different kinds like Instagram and Twitter and YouTube for my vlogs and LinkedIn, different messages. But sometimes you have to make noise yourself. Again, based solely on merit. If no one is listening to you, you will not get the gig. I even made a little profile website where I listed all my presentations, just for the sake of it. Just to seem more professional than I actually was. And that helped me. And ladies and gentlemen, if that opportunity comes your way, who's heard of imposter syndrome? Don't do that. Don't do imposter syndrome. I know it's hard. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I really don't feel like I belong here. Up until 40 minutes ago, I felt like that. But the trick is, act like you belong there. Really do, act like you belong there. Because what I figured out is being at a lot of conferences, being in the green rooms of these kinds of events, is that a lot of these people we call established speakers are just as nervous. Just as nervous. Even the big keynote players are just as nervous. And my first shot came on June 11, 2010. In Amsterdam, at the RAI, at this very event. After years of rejection, years of not getting anywhere, I got my first shot. This is a picture. Thank you, Mark van der Velden, for this picture. This was a picture of my very first international presentation. I used a slide to tell you why register global is a bad idea sometimes. And I talk about the problems we're facing as hosters, because not everyone's a developer. I work at a hosting company. And I explained that. And I know I owe it to both Yoni and the rest of the crew and Tom, but also to Lorna Jane Mitchell, who was running the technical side of the event and did the speaker selection. And she gave me my first shot, and I'm very grateful for that. And I knew it was my moment, and I had to perform. I had to be there. I had to be on my A game, and I was. And that same year, I got selected for PHP Northwest in Manchester and PHP Conference in Barcelona, which was great. And the year after, I got selected for PHP UK, and I even got an acceptance letter to fly to Montreal, as they say there, right? Not Montreal, Montreal, to speak at Confu. It's amazing. I was totally enthused. And then I just kept slugging it out. Talk after talk after talk. This is my 196th talk. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that being here with you on this stage is a great honor. But is that where it ends? Or is that the mission? Is that the goal? Not really. It's about three things. It's about process, it's about outcome, and it's about side effects. Now the process is speaking. I like to speak. I like to be on stage, tell stories, talk about tech. The outcome could be that I could do the closing keynote at DPC edition 2018. But I don't like that outcome, because if you only do the process for the outcome, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that will catch up with you later on. You have to speak because you like speaking. And translate that to whatever you're doing. You have to write code, not just to make money, but because you like writing code. And everything that happens to me, for the time being, I call it side effects, because I haven't figured out what the outcome is. And I don't really care about the outcome. I care about the process. I care about being here with you in this room. It's lovely. It's one of the favorite things I've ever done professionally. Of course, you want to level up. You want to become better. And the trick is to get outside of your comfort zone. Do that. Like, I was afraid to do workshops. I did my very first varnish workshop right here. Thank you, Ari. Thank you. And then the people from Symphony Live. Where's Andreas? Andreas Hux. You asked me to do a 6-hour varnish workshop. You asked me that twice. First time I was super nervous. Like, I nearly shat myself. I was so nervous. But it went okay. To that extent that he invited me again. A couple of months ago, I was at Phantasialand near Cologne, and I did again that 6-hour workshop, and I felt a lot more confident. And it went well, and the feedback was better. But I wanted to do the keynote. I wanted to do the closing keynote. And that was the big deal for me. I had that idea in mind in 2015. 2015, I had it all figured out. Like, I want to do about not being lucky, because my mom told me a lot of cases, you're just like your grandfather. You're always lucky. No, I'm not really lucky, I'm just a positive person. I have that on-off switch, and when I wake up, my wife hates it. I put on the on switch, and I'm happy. I don't want to focus on negativity. You know, I know I'll deploy empathy here, not everyone's wired that way, but I can tell you it helps. And in 2015, I was about to do that keynote. That was my thing. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should do it next year. And then 2016 came, and the idea solidified, but the goal was to do it in 2017. You know what the fuck it, I'll do it moment was? This year. February, PHP UK London, I was sitting in the green room, and I saw these keynote speakers. You'll know these people. Gary Hocken. Who's heard of Gary Hocken? Yes. Jenny Wong, PJ Haggerty, those were the keynote speakers. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, they're good, they're good. And I enjoyed their keynotes. But I believe I'm on the same level. That was what I believe. It might not be true, but I believe I was on the same level. And these people are sitting there in the green room. I know I was wanting to talk to Gary, but Gary was very nervous. He was looking like, I have to prepare, leave me alone for a minute, I'm in the zone. I could do that. And that was the moment that I said, I'm going to do the closing keynote at PHP UK 2019. And I came home, and I said, you know what, I'm going to write an email to Yoni, from the organizer from PHP, Dutch PHP Conference. I said, Yoni, this is Thijs. You gave me my very first shot in 2010. It'd be the greatest of honor, and actually a full circle moment for me to do the closing keynote and explain what my talk was about. And 2 days later, she replied and said, congratulations, you got the slot. I felt totally happy. But again, this is process. This is not outcome. Maybe it's even a side effect, I don't know. My idea is to keep speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking and doing it all over again. And I don't know where I'll end up. What is sure, what is certain, if you give me good feedback on Join In, I might be able to do it again. We'll see about that. But sometimes it doesn't really work that way. Sometimes you need a little more direct impact. Sometimes you have to open the door yourself. I remember one of the previous keynote speakers, Joe. His name is Jules. I think that's the way you pronounce it. Who knows Joe? Who was here to see Joe on this stage? Was that last year? Was it the year before? Last year. He was selected for the FOA conference in Prague. FOA's Future Web Apps used to be a big web developer event. And I congratulated him on Twitter. And I said, congratulations, Joe. And I used the FOA handle. You're speaking at FOA. Great job. And the people at FOA replied. And they said, hey, wouldn't you like to see your friend in action? Why don't you buy a ticket? And I said, yeah, I want to see my friend in action if you give me a speaking slot. Whoa, hold your horses. They didn't reply immediately. What I did is, I saw that variable passing by. I just grabbed onto it. I opened my email client, I looked for their email address and said, yeah, I sent you that stupid tweet, apologies, but what I'm really trying to do is I'm going to explain why you should accept me. And I used that volume, all those little talks, I had to amount for something, right? What if there were only 5 people in the room? If it left an impact, it's good. And I said, look, I can talk about these topics. I use that volume. Now I say, I'm an international conference speaker with 196 talks in 15 different countries. Back in the day, that wasn't the case. It was all of it, but it was good enough to convince them. They said, you know what, you can speak at our event. And the same thing, they hosted an event in Las Vegas, and I saw that some of the speaking slots had TBA in it. I sent them an email like, hey, that Las Vegas event you're doing, looking for speakers, I can be that guy. And not waiting until I send them submissions and abstracts, and they said, okay. I went to Vegas for free, they paid for it, it was amazing. And that also happened with another technology that a lot of people associate me with, both fortunately and unfortunately. Stefan, do you remember when we started PHP Benelux? I was at a meetup at Inventis in Limburg in Belgium, and we're sitting there talking about, Stefan was in PHP GG, the Dutch meetup group. I was in PHP Belgium. We came together, we started PHP Benelux. But one of the crew members of PHP Benelux, Paul, talked about the technology called Varnish, and I'd never heard from it. But being in the hosting industry, it's a technology that totally makes sense for us. It's caching technology, and in the hosting industry, you need caching sometimes. Because we were still using Squid, an old technology, weren't too happy with it. And Paul told me about it, and I got really excited about it. And I applied a little bit of conference-driven development, as they call it. Conference-driven development is you make a submission for a conference, for a topic you care about, but that you don't master, and when you get selected, you better make a good talk. You've done that, Larry? Many times, and it works, because the pressure really makes you focus on the topic, and I did. And I had just enough knowledge to do a decent presentation. And I did presentation after presentation after presentation, but it wasn't just the presentations. I built that expertise. I started learning about it, using new version, applying it at the office. And all of a sudden, something weird happened. I remember going to the Velocity Conference in London, and I tweeted about that. And the community manager of Varnish, Ruben Romero, contacted me and said, Thijs, we're doing a sidetrack event at the BBC. And the entire core community will be there. We would like you to do a talk there as well. I'm like, whoa, sounds actually cool. If I would tell my mom, hey mom, I'm going to London, I'm going to the BBC, speak there about some tech, and the inventor of the tech will be there. Like, scary stuff, right? And I said, Ruben, like, I really appreciate it, but why me? And he says, you have a different angle. You are not a hardcore C nerd that thinks about kernel tricks. I care about how developers adopt the technology. And I did a talk called Not Everyone Respects the Rules. And I explained how developers often screw up caching from an architectural point of view. And that became my thing. I did talk after talk after talk. And up until this point, I think I've done 60 talks about Varnish. And that's always my mindset, developers first. And it worked. And they even invited me to their summits. I had to speak at one of their summits in Amsterdam and in Copenhagen. And those are more businessy events, but where you still can do a sort of feel-good talk about technology. And in 2016, I was getting friendly with them. It's building up the relationship, right? I got that email, got this email. Now, I glanced over the first word that was marked in yellow. I glanced over that. And I just read, we're looking to publish a book about Varnish. Would you be interested in writing that book? I'm like, yeah, eventually, one day. And then that dreaded imposter syndrome kicked in. Like, I'm not the guy for that. Why me? There's so many better people to do it. Now, I knew they wanted someone independent, so no one from internal. And then I looked at the first part. Oh, O'Reilly. Yeah, sure. I contacted my boss. I'm like, I could write an O'Reilly book if you want that. And he's like, that's an excellent marketing instrument. We'll do that. And I wrote a book. Spent a year of my life writing a book. I have the copy right here. And let's raffle it. There's raffles after this. I'll raffle a copy of that. It was the most amazing experience. I could spend an hour talking about the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster that was. Writing the book was the easy part. I know a couple of people who are here who have read it. That's the scary part for me. Will there be typos in there? Is it good enough? But I was selected, and you have to respect that as well, to write a 101 book. It's very simple. It explains the basics. It's not an expert level book, but you need those as well. And now I can use that as ammunition, because I didn't get that writing gig by luck, right? I was on their radar constantly. And they read my tweets, and they know that I did tons of talks about what they did, and it fit into their strategy. And they asked me, because they knew I was the guy that does Varnish for developers. And now I have that, and I could use that as leverage, and use that as a stepping stone. This is not the outcome. Writing that book is definitely not the outcome. It's just a side effect that will help my process, to help me reach the next step. Sometimes,
once you leave this,
you have to say yes.
Every time an opportunity presents itself, no matter what it is, you will say yes.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes weird opportunities come your way that make no sense whatsoever. Writing that book, that made sense. But sometimes things happen that make no sense, and you can choose to walk away, or you can choose to really engage in that. And sometimes these things on a long-term basis pan out to be very, very successful. And sometimes it doesn't even make you money, sometimes it costs you money. But if it ticks some of those boxes, like, I'm gonna do it. And I did that. I bullshitted my way into a conference in Poland, in Poznan, and I spoke there. And by the end of the talk, a guy approached me. Had a thick Eastern European accent. Sorry for the stereotypes, but I'm going to try and impersonate him. He's like, I organize PHP Con Poland. Would you like to speak at my conference? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? I gave him my business card. I heard nothing. And then he wrote me an email and gave me a call. And he said, you fly to Krakow. Guy will be there with car, drive you 3 hours in mountains. I don't know about that. Is Wim here? When we were there together, right, at that event. So I did. I was like, what could possibly go wrong? A guy with a car, and it turned out to be 3 guys that I didn't know. It's like, yeah, hop in, we're gonna drive. And they drove me out to Polish countryside, and we ended up at some tavern where a sort of cabin to have the lunch, and it had huge plastic dinosaurs in the garden, and they played MIDI music inside. Craziest thing. But in some crazy way, it felt good. It felt really good. And the conference was amazing, actually. And there were only 4 foreigners. 3 Belgians, Michelangelo, me, Wim, and an American guy named Jeffrey A. Maguire, or Jam as he called himself. He's a community member of the Drupal scene. Who has heard of Jam? He's a really cool guy. And we met there. It was, we established that relationship, and year after year after year, I saw him, and he featured me on an Acquia podcast, and we became friendly. But I know now that he was responsible to break me into a community I had really a tough time to get into. I wanted to speak at DrupalCons, which is like this, but with 10 times as much people. There was a Drupal community is really cool, weird, but super cool, and I wanted to break into it. And I had 150 talks on my resume in 15 different countries, and it wasn't good enough. I never got into that conference. It frustrated me. And I know I contacted him early 2017. I said, look, I have this submission about using JSON Web Tokens to authenticate logged in users in Drupal. It's based off a client project we did. I'm like, interesting. And he got me accepted. So saying yes to Darius. Sorry, Darius, if you're watching this eventually, for me impersonating you, you're a great guy, you run a great event, and he runs it alone. It's not easy to run that kind of event. He did a great job, but saying yes to that eventually led me to speak at DrupalCon. That was amazing. And I think, like, I'm happy I said yes. This is the place where it happened. It was in Mohochice Kapituri, in the middle of nowhere. And I remember jogging, there was nothing to, like, from the window, you could see absolutely nothing, only landscape. It was like The Shining, but a lot more friendly. Yeah, it was an amazing event. I remember jogging there, and my jogging shoes with me, I ran in the woods, and I got lost. I didn't know where I was. I took a wrong turn in those bushes. I didn't know where I was. And I remember Darius saying, this area is very known for wildlife, specifically bears. But everything turned out all right, and it's a great story to tell. Now, one of the final stories I'm going to tell you is about a new passion I developed for a couple of years. Who has seen this guy before? Yeah, altogether, what's the name of this person? Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat is a world-class vlogger. He has an interesting history of himself. He's from Connecticut. He was a bit of a scumbag, was on drugs, lived in a trailer park with his girlfriend, got her pregnant when he was 16, got kicked out, moved to New York on a mission to become a filmmaker, did dishes for years, got his first break, made movies, ended up doing an HBO series with his brother, got fed up by the industry and said, you know what, I'm going to do it all myself, and he established a really popular YouTube channel. I love his vlogs. A lot of people hate him. I love his vlogs. And I asked our marketing manager, like, I like that vlogging thing. I would like to do that. And I remember at my wedding, my buddies composed a little video of my bachelor party, and a guy, one of my really good friends, whose name is also Thijs, composed that video. I said, dude, this guy's not even technical. If he can make a video, if he can edit a video, I surely can do it. And I put my mind to it, and ever since, every single event, every single conference I've been going to for the last, I think, year and a half, 2 years, I always vlog. I'll use this footage. There's a camera right there. There's a camera here. Harry's filming. I've been running around with my GoPro. I make vlogs every time, and I enjoy it. And do a lot of people watch it? Not really. But a really interesting side effect happened. So I'm not only a big fan of Casey, I'm also a fan of a football team called Club Brugge. And we go there with my friends. We've been going there for years. We're season ticket holders. And I told my buddies, you know what if I were to take my GoPro with me during games and film some of it? What could possibly happen, right? What could happen? And my friend said, yeah. A, what are we going to say? B, who is going to film it and edit it? C, who's going to watch it? Who is going to actually care about us making stupid videos of football? But I did. And the very first video, it was in the 2015-2016 season, near the playoffs. And my team, Club Brugge, hadn't been champion in 11 years. And they were doing well in those playoffs. And eventually they became champion that season, and I recorded fan videos. By fans, for fans, about fans. Human interaction, stories, celebrating goals, doing all kinds of stuff. First video had nearly no views. Second video was a home game we won against our eternal rivals, or one of our eternal rivals, which we won in a dramatic fashion. And a fan website picked it up. And we got 1,000 views or 2,000 views, I can't remember. And that started off, and we kept doing it, really putting in hard work. And it was amazing. We gave it a name, we called it FCB, which is FC Bruges Support. We're a fan page. And this is us making videos with a bunch of friends. And it was just nothing else than, as you can see, celebrating goals, the pyro. I collected some of my footage, another goal. And people loved it because it was so down to earth. Again, it was low threshold. There's, like, at football games, this is my son who joined me once. He liked it. Look, he's waving his little car, welcoming the bus. There's people from all layers of society there. All kinds of layers. It was a fun game. All layers of society there. You have executives that go see the game in the business seat. You have people who are on welfare, who have a hard time buying their season ticket. And we get in touch with all of them. And I think a week, or no, 4 days before we became champion, after 11 years of not winning anything, I got a phone call. And it was by a guy named Geert. And Geert is the main guy behind the main support group of Club Brugge, Blue Army. And he said, Thijs, we've been watching those videos of yours, and we really like it. You know what, we should have a meeting. And we had that meeting. And he said, next season, that was the 2016-2017 season, it's 125 years of the club. We want to do something special, and we want you to help us. You've been putting in long hours, putting in the work. Why don't we make something together? And I'll get you in touch with the club, and you'll be able to interview players and staff, and you can make, every single month, you can make a fun video in your same style, in that authentic, passionate, low threshold, very acceptable style. And we did, and we got in touch with all sorts of players. And we got backstage, all area passes in the stadium, and we got to interview players. This is one where the player gave French lessons to, my buddy's a teacher, and we let him give a French class, and all of a sudden newspapers started reporting about us. Like that, one of those videos, there's a couple of Dutch players in there for the Dutch nationals, Ruud Vormer, Stefano Denswil, they're Dutch players. But that one player, that French-speaking player, Benoit Poulain, we asked the club, like, wouldn't it be really good for the club, it collides quite well with the values of the club. My buddy is a teacher right across the stadium in an elementary school. We get a French-speaking player, we design something, a small package of material that he presents to the class, and the kids learn French in a really interesting way. The club said, yeah, we're totally on board. The principal of the school said, yeah, this is the kind of advertisement we need. And we made that, and 2 days after I published that video, a reporter called my buddy and said, yeah, we want to do a full page on that in one of the biggest newspapers in Belgium. They did a full page on it. They contacted the guy I got in touch with the club, the press officer, and he gave a comment about it that he likes to co-create and that he likes it and it's a good way for the future. And we ended up on the biggest website, sports website in Belgium. And a lot of the videos we make, if we make them funny enough or interesting enough, they end up in newspapers. So that story about, hey, I'm going to bring my little GoPro to, holy shit, I'm on the biggest website in Belgium in regards to sports. It never crossed my mind. Again, this is not outcome, this is just process. And what happens to me now, this is a side effect, we make stories about people. That's the only thing we do. Interesting stories about people. And nowadays, we've gotten a bit of local fame, and people just start approaching us. Whenever I walk through the stadium, we have a deal with the club now, we get badges so that we could go into all stands. People just talk to us. People are super passionate about what we do. And I remember talking to a guy, I was drinking a beer, and I have that when people nod to me in the stadium, I know they watch the videos. A guy came up to me, a bit of a dodgy dude, and he had to tattoo. Maybe I should wait until this is over, because this is drawing in all your attention, right? All kinds of people. This is high five country. This is fun. Now, that person, she's a professional basketball player. She's in the Belgian national team. She's also a fan. Really cool. Even, like, we interviewed one of these disabled people about, so we do sometimes fun in the cake, as we call it. We focus on one fan. And that guy in his wheelchair told us about how passionate he is, how he experiences the games, and how he goes to school and his classmates ask him, did you break your wheelchair again? Because he gets so excited because of the game that he actually physically breaks his wheelchair. And those are stories about people. That dodgy dude that nodded to me, he came to me. He had a big spider tattooed in his neck, and he had 1891 tattooed in his neck, which is the foundation date of the club. He came up to me, scruffy beard, gold chain. He said, I watch your movies. I'm like, hey, thanks. Good. Keep on doing it. Like, yeah, thanks. But the situation completely changed in the next couple of minutes. I said, I used to be part of the East Side, which is our big hooligan crew that I used to stay away from. And I used to crush a lot of skulls, bash a lot of people's faces. But I stopped doing that. Because I have a son that was born with severe mental and physical disabilities. He'll never be able to live on his own. He needs constant care. And that changed everything for me. And life set in. And he said, I need joy in my life, and I feel so passionate about the club. And instead of punching people in the face, I'd rather hug someone. And your videos give positivity in my life. That left a huge mark on me. I was like, what the hell are we doing? Nowadays, we get into these weird side effects. I had twice this year that I'm on an airport, not in Belgium, where people approach me for my videos. I was in Montreal, waiting to go to Kung Fu. At customs, a family came up to me. Hey, you're the guy from the movies, right? In Rome, that happened to me. I get to take selfies with kids, which is definitely not a side effect and definitely not a goal. Like, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I always say yes, because in the process, you can translate that to professional life as well. In the process, you have to, every kind of person, you have to treat them with respect. Is it my goal to be famous? No. I just want to be one of those fans who creates that content and ends up somewhere. And we get praised a lot. But if a person asks for a selfie, you say yes. A month ago, I had to sign my first ball. Amazing. Amazing. And this happens in that small ecosystem. And people recognize me now there, and beyond that, people don't. And the vlogs I make for football can get up to 100,000 views. Vlogs I make about tech get 200 views. But still, it's an amazing ride, and I couldn't have anticipated that this would happen. Now, what does the future bring? I have no clue. In terms of what we do with FCB support, the football vlogging thing, we'll keep doing what we do. And we'll establish those relationships, because we've built up that relationship. That didn't happen by accident. I did lots of interactions. I figured out, and that's also a tip I could give you, if you're in a situation that is new to you, figure out who the key players are. And I figured out these are the marketing people, they like us, this is the press officer, he decides everything. And I became friendly with him. Not just because I wanted something from him. I honestly respect the person. And I interact with him on social media. And a dirty trick I apply, but I apply it for good reasons. If you're watching, Kirsten, it's all for good reasons. On Instagram stories, you could see what people, if they view your posts. And sometimes I would deliberately post something from my professional life, because I wanted to prove to them that I'm not a nobody. Like, I have a career and I do things and I'm a reliable person, you can trust me. Specific things about, like, being on stage. Or being, like, because I travel a lot for work, I save up air miles. And I splashed them once on a first-class flight to New York with my wife. And I knew he saw that, he even commented on that. And that's like creating that perception sometimes. And I know constant interaction, mature behavior, making the right videos, making sure that something is off topic, or off the record rather, you don't talk about that in the videos. If they don't agree with a statement you make in the video, play nice. But at the end of the line, I'm pretty sure that will get me somewhere. And sometimes you have the idea, like I've had these backstage all areas passes for games, and I thought, yes, now we've made it. But next time I asked, it wasn't possible. And he gave a really valid, respectful reason for it, and I accepted it. Sometimes you're not all that, like, they put me back a notch, like, okay, head down, work, process, and eventually we'll get there. That's not only for what I'm doing with my football vlog, also with my regular vlogs, or maybe my career in general. Don't think because you've reached a certain state that you're the man or the lady right now. You're not. Process. Sometimes a side effect, and maybe eventually we'll find the outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, it's all about finding out what the variables are and controlling them. And there's lots of keywords that I use. Remember that treasure map early on? There's lots of those that we can use. But I'll give you a couple ones. 3 that start with P. In order to be successful, at least apply passion, respect the people, and have the patience. That being said, it was a tremendous honor being here. I always wanted to do this in life, and I'm glad I was able to share it with you. The end.